In section 4.2 of chapter 4, we want to talk about the law of cosine. If you have watched 4.1, we talked about the law of sine, and both of the law of sine and law of cosine will be used for solving any oblique triangles. We show in 4.1 that if in any triangle that the one side and two angle was given, we use law of sine to solve the triangle. And now we want to see in which cases we are going to use the law of cosine. And the law of cosine will be used to solve triangle that the two sides and one included angle is given to us, or the three sides are given to us. So for these two cases, SAS and SSS, we will discuss how we can use the law of cosine. Let's see what is the law of cosine first. The law of cosines are these formulas, which means if we have a triangle that with ABC as angles and lowercase a, b, c for the sides, we always can use the law of cosine, which tells us that the s square of one side it's equal to the sum of s squares of the two other sides minus the twice the multiplication times the cosine of the included angle. Which means if I want to find this side, when the other two sides is given to me, I will square this side and square the other side and then add them together. Then I will multiply these two sides and then multiply by 2 and multiply by the cosine, by the cosine of the included angle, which means the angle in between. And if I subtract that sum from this product, I will get the s square of the third side. And if I take the root, I can have the third side. So we are going to use one of these formula based on what sides are given to us and what do we want to find. Let's see how we can solve an SAS triangle, which means a triangle that two sides and one included angle is given to us. When we have SAS means we have an angle which is between the two sides. For example, we have a triangle which this side and this angle in between is given to me. It's called SAS, and now I want to solve this triangle to find the other two sides and the third side. The other two angles and the third side. So the first step for solving these triangles is using the law of cosine to find the opposite side. So when you have two sides, you are going to use the law of cosine to find the third one. Then, after finding all three sides, to find angles, we are going to use a law of sine. But which angle we need to find first, I underline here, because it's important. If we don't follow that, we will get different answers. So we always use a law of sine to find the angle which is opposite to the shorter side. So out of these two sides that was given to us, we use law of sine to find the angle in front of the shorter one. If A is shorter one, we find this angle first by using the law of sine. If B is shorter side, we use the law of sine to find angle B, this. And after finding the second angle, now we can say that, okay, all three angles must be 180, so I can find the third angle as well. Or if you want, you can again use the law of sine for the third angle as well. But for sure, it's just adding them up as set it equal to 180 is much easier than using the law of sine. So make sure when you are solving these types of triangles, follow these steps. Let's look at an example first. We want to solve a triangle, which you can see in this picture. And as you see, angle which is 120 degrees given to us. Side B and side C also are given to us. And we want to solve this triangle. Solve this triangle means find angle B, find angle C, and find side A. So as I said, whenever we have two sides and one angle in between, we are going to use the law of cosine to find the third side. So since we want to find side A, so we are going to use the formula which gives me A. And it's A squared, which is equal to the other two sides squared minus 2, multiply these two sides again, and multiply with the cosine of the angle which is between these two sides, and that's angle A. So that's the formula that I'm going to use. So write the formula and replace numbers, and then we find A squared, which is equal to 169, and if we take this square root, we get 13 for the third side. And however, we always keep a plus and minus when we take the square root. We don't put any plus or minus here because this is the side of a triangle, so we cannot be for sure negative. So we always, after taking the square root, we keep it positive. Then step 2, we need to use the law of sine to find one of the angles. But which angle B or C, the angle opposite to the shorter side. So out of the two sides that's given to me, B and C, B is the shorter side, which means that I'm going to use the law of sine because this angle is given to me. So for sure, one of the fraction that I'm going to use for the law of sine is A over sine A. And the other fraction, it should be B over sine B, because I want to find angle B first, the shorter side, the angle opposite to the shorter side. So then we use these fractions, the law of sine, replace numbers, and find the sine of B by isolating the sine of B. So don't forget again, so for isolating, we use the cross multiplying. We multiply 13 by sine B and then set it equal to 7 times sine 120 and then divide both sides by 13. It gives me this number. But that's the sine of angle B. If you need the angle B, you need to use the sine inverse key from your calculator. And since the question says that rounded to the nearest degree, we rounded to 28 degrees. So now I know that the A is 13. I got that the angle B must be 28. Now, third step is finding angle C. And angle C is easy because I already have two angles, and if I add them together, set them equal to 180, I can find the third one, which is 32 degrees. Now I have solved this triangle by finding all three sides and all three angles. Let's look at another example. You want to solve this triangle, and it says round length of side to the nearest 10, that means 1 decimal digit, and angles to the nearest degree, that means no decimals for angles. Okay. Looking at the picture tells me that the two sides and the angle in between is given to me. That means as a first step, I'm going to use the law of cosine to find the third side, which is side A. Okay. So since I'm going to find side A, I will use this formula. A squared is equal to B squared plus C squared minus 2BC cosine of A. Replace numbers for B and C. B is 4 squared, which is 16. C is 8 squared, which is 64. 2 times 4 times 8 times cosine of 46. For finding the cosine of 46, you need a calculator. Then 16 plus 64 is 80, minus multiply these 3 is 64 cosine of 46. Type this in the calculator, and the answer would be 35.5. That's the S square of side A. So I need to take the square root, and the square root of 35.5 is Actually, 5.9 is 6. But since it says rounded to the nearest 10, it's about 6. So that's side A. Okay, now it's time to find the two other angles, B or C. But the question is which one we are going to find first. The angle that's opposite to the shorter side. And between these two sides, the shorter one is B, so I'm going to find angle B first by writing the law of sine for angle A. So A over sine A, because that's the only angle that's given to me. And I want to find angle B, B over sine B. So if you replace a number, A is 6, angle A is 46, B is 4, and I don't know angle B because I want to find it. Do the cross multiplying, 6 times sine B should be equal to 4 times sine 46. And then divide both sides by 6. You get that the sine B must be equal to 4 sine 46. Divide by 6. And if you put this one in calculator, the sine B should be equal to 0.4796. And now it's time to use the sine inverse key in the calculator to find angle B. So angle B, it's equal to, it's about 29 degrees. If you round it to the whole, it's 28.6, but since it says rounded to the nearest degree, we round it up to 29. Now I have this angle as well. So the only thing that's left is finding angle C, and I know that the sum of all three angles, it's always equal to 180. And that's easy to find the third angle because angle C is 180 minus these two, and 46 plus 29, which is 75, and 180 minus 75 is 105. So the angle C is also 105 degree. And now we are done. So I'm going to follow the 3 steps. Now let's see how we can solve triangles that just the 3 sides given to us. We call this case SSS. That means we have a triangle that we have the size of all 3 sides, and we want to solve that triangle. And solve that triangle means finding the 3 angles. So what are the steps that I'm going to follow? I'm going to use the law of cosine to find the opposite, to find an angle this time. Remember, you're using the law of cosine, but not for finding a side, to find an angle opposite to the longest side first. Because the 3 sides is given to you. You just need to find angles. And you use law of cosine to find the angle which is opposite to the longest side first. Then we use law of sine to find either of the 2 remaining angles. So it doesn't matter which one we find first. And after finding one of them, we can add them, subtract from 180, and then we will have all 3 angles. Let's see in an example how it works. Example 3, we want to solve this triangle, and as you see in the picture, the 3 sides is given to us. And now we want to find the 3 angles. So what we can do? First, use the law of cosine to find the angle opposite to the longest side. The longest side is 10. That means you are going to use law of cosine to find angle B. So which of those formula gives me angle B? The one that has B square. B square is equal to A square plus C square minus 2AC cosine of B. So we're going to use this formula, replace number for A, B, and C, and find the cosine of angle B. So the cosine of angle B is negative 11 over 80. So you can solve the formula for cosine B like what we did here, or you can replace numbers and then solve for cosine B. It doesn't matter. If you replace numbers, B squared is 100. A squared means 8 squared, which is 64. C squared is 5 squared, which is 25, minus 2 times A times C times cosine B. Then you need to add these two, 64 plus 25, which is 89, and then subtract 89 from the both sides. 100 minus 89 is 11. And on the other side, we have negative. And if you multiply these three, we get 80 cosine of B. And then divide both sides by negative 80. And we got this one for the cosine B. Now, to find the B, I need to use the cosine inverse key on my calculator. And I will find cosine inverse of this number, which is a negative. And don't forget to use a negative when you're typing the number in calculator. A negative sign is different than the minus or subtraction. We have two different negative key on the calculator. One of them is for subtraction. The other one is just for make numbers negative. So make sure to use the correct one. And then when you type this number, you get the cosine inverse or 98, which means the angle B must be equal to 98 degrees. After finding this angle, now we can use law of sine to find either of A or C. So we know so far that's 98. And since we have angle B, for sure one of my fractions should be B over sine B. And if you want to find angle A, you are going to use A over sine A. But if you want to find angle C, you put C over sine C. Replace numbers, find sine A, and then use inverse sine, and you get 52. So angle A is 52 degrees. Now, finding the third angle, it's easy because I know two angles already, 98 plus 52, and then subtract it from 180, and it gives me 30 degrees. So now I have solved this triangle. The three sides was given to me, and now I found the three angles. Another example. We have a triangle, which the three sides is given to me, and they ask me to solve the triangle, which means find the three angles. First step is finding one of the angles by using law of cosine. So one side is 10, one side is 5, one is, so its side is C, B is 5 is A, which means this is my angle A, and 7 is B, which means this is my angle B. We always use the law of cosine to find the angle which is opposite to the longest side, and this time the longest side is 10, which means I need to find angle C first. So I'm going to use the formula that starts with C squared, or the law of cosine. C squared means 10 squared, A squared means 5 squared, which is 25, B squared means 7 squared, which is 49, minus 2 times A times B times the cosine of C. 25 plus 49, which is 74, and if I subtract 74 from the both sides, I get 26, and if I multiply these three, I get 70, negative 70 times cosine of C. And if I divide both sides by negative 70 to isolate the cosine, we will find that the cosine of C must be equal to negative 26 over 70. And if I use the cosine inverse for negative 26 over 70, the result would be 111.8. But if rounded to the nearest degree, it's 112. So we found the angle C. Now, we are going to use law of sine to find either of angle A or angle B. So I want to find angle A first. It doesn't matter. You can start with angle B. You still get the same answer. So for sure, I'm going to use, since this angle is given to me right now, I found it actually, I'm going to use C over sine C as one of my fraction. And since I want to find angle A, I will put A over sine A. And remember that since the law of sine is talking about the ratio of the side over the sine of the opposite angle, this ratio, it may be in opposite, in a flip form as well. So you may see in some books that instead of C over sine C and A over sine A, they say sine C over C or sine A over A. It doesn't matter, both of them works. C is 10, sine of 120, 112, sorry. A is 5, and I want to find sine A. Do the cross multiplying. So 10 times sine A should be equal to 5 times sine 112. Divide both sides by 10. So sine A must be equal to 5 sine 112 over 10. And if I put this one in calculator, I can get sine A, which is equal to 0.4636. Then I'm going to use the sine inverse key to find angle for this answer. And the answer would be 28 degrees if you round it to the nearest degree. Now, I know two angles. So the third angle, it's easy because I know 112 plus 28 plus angle B should be equal to 180, which means angle B must be, if I add these two, 112 plus 28, it's 130, 140, and 180 minus 140, it's 40 degrees. So angle B is also must be 40 degrees. And I'm done. We can also use law of cosine to solve applications, the word problem. For example, in this example, they're asking us to find the distance across the lake from point A to C to the nearest yard. So we have someone from in point B, which knows the measure from this point to the one side of the lake, which is 160 yards, and to the other side of the lake is 140 yards. And now we want to find the distance across the lake from point A to point C. So since it created a triangle with two sides and one angle in between, again, the only option that I have when I have two sides to find the third side is using the law of cosine. So if I call this side x, I can use the law of cosine by writing x squared, which is equal to 140 squared plus 160 yard squared minus 2 times 140 times 160 times cosine of 80 degrees. And then it's just calculation. 140 squared plus 160 squared, which is 45,200, minus, multiply these three, and then multiply by cosine 80 in the calculator. It gives me 7779.44. And if I subtract these numbers, it gives me, and if I take the square root of this number, the x would be 193.4. But since If you want to round it, you can just write it as a 193 yards, because the other sides are also have a unit of yard. Okay. And the last example, it says, suppose a boat leaves the port. This point is the port. Leaves the port, travels 10 miles. It's just travel 10 miles to this point, and turns 20 degrees, and then travels another 8 miles. Now the boat is here. Now it's asking how far from port is the boat, which means find this side, and it creates a triangle again. You want to find this side. So 2 sides is given to me. If 2 sides is given to me, I need to have an angle in between that I can use the law of cosine. So I need to find this angle first. And this angle, since this, if you look at this whole line, this whole angle is 180. But if I subtract the 20 degree from that, 180 minus 20 is 160. So this angle is 160 degree. Now I have 2 sides and 1 included angle, which means I can use the law of cosine to find the third side. Again, I can write x squared, which is equal to 10 squared plus 8 squared minus 2 times 10 times 8 times cosine of 160. 10 squared is 100. 8 squared is 64. Multiply these 3 gives me 160 times cosine of 160. I need to put this one in calculator and add these together and then subtract the answers from each other. And the answer for x squared would be 314.35. And if I take the square root of this number, the answer would be 17.7. And since the units are miles, so it's minus. So how far from port is the boat is 17.7 miles. Or if you want to round it, you should round it up to 18 miles.